Splash! As I was thrown roughly into the sea, cheers erupted from the cruise ship's deck. Applause and shouts of approval filled the air. Yet no one seemed concerned if I would make it back alive. I flailed desperately, and my limbs thrashed in the water as I opened my mouth and tried to scream for help. However, all I swallowed was salty seawater. Help! Please help me! My desperate cries only entertained them. My cries were a thrill to make their night even more exciting. Some even tossed pieces of bread and wine into the water, laughing so hard they doubled over in their eyes. I wasn't a person drowning in the sea but a spectacle for their amusement. Soon, my limbs grew heavy, my legs cramped, and I started to sink. In my haze, I saw two people on the deck, watching. One of them had once given me new life, and now he was gazing at my struggle with a blank expression. The other had promised to be kind to me forever, yet now he was holding another woman in his arms. With the same twisted mirth on his face as everyone else, mockery, scorn, and derision to him. I was merely a plaything. I felt so tired, both physically and emotionally. All I wanted was to let go and rest. The undulating sea felt like the comforting embrace of my mother's arms when I was a child. Rocking me to sleep with a faint smile, I slowly closed my eyes. Here in her embrace, I didn't have to hear their mocking laughter or wonder if anyone truly cared. I just needed to close my eyes and drift off to sleep. But even this safe harbor was fleeting. Murmured voices pulled me back, and when I opened my eyes, I was blinded by the white surroundings. My mind was blank. I couldn't remember anything, not even who I was. Then the voices around me changed tone. The patient is awake. Notify Mr. Cooper and Mr. Reed immediately. Run another check on her, and prepare her for further treatment. I lay there on the bed and let them move me as they needed. Someone offered me a bit of water, and the dryness in my throat eased. Gradually, my mind cleared. I remembered I'd attended Rebecca Green's birthday cruise party as Jonathan Cooper's date. In her usual thrill-seeking fashion, Rebecca had proposed a gamble between Jonathan Cooper and William Reed. The loser's date would be tossed into the sea for 5 minutes, without any safety measures. Whether one of us would live or die was left entirely to chance. While Rebecca loved her dangerous games, I didn't want any part of her madness, let alone wager my life. But to appease her twisted desire, Jonathan and William had both held me down and agreed that I had looked at Jonathan, silently pleading for him to come to his senses. To my dismay, he hadn't spared me a glance, focusing solely on his cards. I turned to William, hoping for some mercy, but he only had eyes for Rebecca. He had smirked and chuckled at me. Don't be scared, Cherry. Who knows? Maybe Jonathan will win this last round. 2 rounds had already passed, and each had scored 1. All my hope rested on this final hand. I would have given up every ounce of luck I had left to be spared. But in the end, Jonathan laid down his cards in defeat. Gasps of disbelief rippled through the crowd, and I too was wide-eyed. Jonathan was known for his relentless drive to win, yet he had surrendered. For the first time he had uttered, "I give up." William had snickered. "Sorry, Cherry. Looks like I won." Any last bit of hope had drained from me, leaving my heart feeling cold and heavy as stone. Rebecca had clapped her hands, her eyes glinting with satisfaction. "Sorry, Ms. Davis, but it looks like you're going for a swim tonight. Make way, everyone, I want the best view." 2 bodyguards had seized me, one on each side, and as they dragged me past Jonathan, I had clung to his sleeve and begged, "John, I can't swim. Please don't do that." But Jonathan had just looked at me calmly and covered my hand for a brief moment. "Cherry, I lost. I have to accept the punishment." It was the middle of summer, yet a deep chill had overtaken me. I had been thrown overboard, plunging from the cruise ship into the water. The impact had jolted my mind, and a piercing ache had throbbed in my temples as I struggled to breathe, and those 2 people, the ones I had believed would be there for me my entire life, had looked on, detached and almost entertained. At that moment, I had felt an overwhelming sense of despair I'd never known before. Even now, as I recalled it, I couldn't help but shiver, and my teeth chattered involuntarily. Footsteps hurried outside the hospital ward, and soon Jonathan and William entered. Rebecca followed behind them and stood at the foot of my bed, her eyes red-rimmed. "Ms. Davis, I'm sorry. I didn't know where to draw the line. I'll cover all your medical expenses. I just hope you can let this go and not hold a grudge against me." Her voice was soft and sincere, a stark contrast to the Rebecca who'd proposed that reckless bet on the cruise. My head buzzed, and I closed my eyes to block out the ache. Jonathan and William, Though it seemed like I resented Rebecca, Jonathan stood by my bed, looking down at me from his usual aloof distance. Even though I'd almost died right before his eyes, it hadn't shaken him in the slightest. But he hadn't always been like this. That I had been 10 years old when Dad had taken me to the red light district. He had handed me a single red rose and said gently, "Cherry, remember, whoever takes this flower, you'll go with them. Do you understand?" I hadn't asked him why. Seeing that tenderness on his face for the first time had left me speechless. When I hadn't responded, he had grown agitated, grabbing my arm and shaking my frail body. It was only at that moment I had recognized the father I had known all too well. He had been an alcoholic addicted to gambling and only knew how to hurt me and Mom. After he'd beaten Mom to death and become burdened by a child he hadn't wanted, he had planned to sell me off. I had seen it happen to others, girls clutching red roses, waiting to be taken away by strangers. If no one had taken the flower, they would be sold straight into the district. One by one, people had walked by, yet no one had taken the rose from my hand. Dad had grown angry and cursed me for being useless. "I should have ended you as well," he had spat while dragging me toward the doorway. Just then, a boy had taken the flower from my hand. He had barely looked at me when giving instructions to the bodyguard behind him to speak with Dad. I had watched Dad accept a thick wad of cash, bowing and scraping as he had watched us leave. The boy had taken me to a large house and had people teach me reading, writing, and manners, but after that day, I hadn't seen him again, not until 3 years later. I had grown from a skinny child to a young woman, and finally, he had shown up. He had still worn that calm expression, but his eyes had brightened when he had seen me. That day I had learned his name was Jonathan, and he had told me to treat him as an older brother. And I had. For 10 years I had stayed by his side. Jonathan had once promised he would protect me all his life, that no one would ever hurt me again. But now, he'd forgotten those words and reserved his care for another woman. Even as I lay here after nearly having drowned, he was defending someone else. Cherry Becca just had too much to drink. She got carried away in the moment. Don't hold it against her. His tone was as indifferent as ever, his lips a thin line and his gaze emotionless. My throat was dry, and I couldn't find my voice. Jonathan frowned slightly with a hint of annoyance in his expression. "Cherry, don't be childish." So my pain was just a childish tantrum to him. I clenched my fists hard at the realization, my nails digging into my palm painfully. He had once told me that by doing so, my heart wouldn't hurt as much. I wanted to tell Jonathan I wasn't throwing a tantrum. I wasn't even angry. I simply wanted us to be done with each other. But when I tried to speak, my throat hurt and no words came out. William lost his patience, and whatever brief guilt he had felt earlier was completely gone. "Charlotte, Becca has already apologized. Would it kill you to say something? What do you think you're so precious? Can't even take a little joke?" he added. "You've been living under Jonathan's wing for over 10 years, and instead of learning anything worthwhile, you've become downright spoiled.